Welcome to This Explainer, where we're diving straight into one of the wildest internet frenzies in recent memory. May 2025. The internet absolutely exploded with this terrifying rumor that the world's most notorious haunted artifact was somehow on the loose. The story literally had it all, right? A demonic entity, a sudden tragic death, and a 50-year-old curse suddenly awakened. But today, we're cutting through that massive wave of digital hysteria to break down exactly what the established facts actually tell us. Look, just hours after the breaking news hit the wires, social media feeds were completely flooded. People were terrified, sharing quotes like, "Annabelle is missing, she escaped, and her curse is unleashed again." The collective panic was totally palpable. Your thousands of people genuinely believing an evil energy was just wandering free out there. But to really grasp why this blew up the way it did, we have to look at the very real, very tragic event that sparked the whole thing. And that spark was the sudden passing of Dan Rivera. Now, Rivera wasn't just some random guy. He was a U.S. Army veteran and the lead investigator for the New England Society of Psychic Research, or NESPR. His entire career was built around documenting demonic phenomena. So think about it. When a guy whose whole life is intimately tied to the paranormal is found dead while touring with the most famous cursed artifact on Earth, well, you can kind of see why the public immediately jumped to some incredibly dark conclusions. To really get the 2025 panic, it helps to trace this thing back. It's almost like a giant puzzle. It starts back in 1952, when demonologist Ed and Lorraine Warren founded NESPR. Fast forward to 1971, and they secure the Annabelle doll, locking it away after it supposedly terrorized its previous owners. And for decades, it just sat there, building this massive, terrifying reputation, right up until the Warrens Museum officially closed its doors to the public in 2019. So for nearly 50 years, this allegedly cursed ragdoll was locked safely away in Monroe, Connecticut. But it wasn't just sitting on a shelf. According to the lore, it was sealed inside a very specific box using holy water and sacred binding rituals that were explicitly designed to contain its massive negative energy. For almost half a century, it rusted quietly in that repository, morphing into this absolute modern legend. And honestly, the museum itself ended up getting a reputation for being cursed. People started reporting these crazy strings of bad luck and accidents right after visiting. Local authorities tried to brush it off as pure superstition at first, but eventually the unlucky incidents grew way too numerous to ignore. That's actually why the museum was completely closed to the public in 2019. From then on, the doll was only ever shown in super controlled environments, complete with heavy safety warnings. The whole folklore of this doll is anchored by some deeply unsettling stories. For instance, there's this famous account of a visiting Catholic priest. He supposedly looked at the doll, laughed it off as just a simple rag doll, and headed out. But on his drive home, his car brakes mysteriously completely failed. He miraculously survived the terrifying ordeal, but he later confessed to feeling a distinct, heavy, negative presence in his car with him. And then there's the much darker local rumor about a biker couple. According to the story, the young man was visiting the museum, tapped on the sacred glass, and totally mocked the doll, demanding it do something to prove it was real. Unlike the priest, this one doesn't have a miraculous ending. The moment they left the museum, they were involved in a fatal motorcycle crash, and the biker was killed immediately. Stories like that give some serious weight to Lorraine Warren's famous chilling warning. When that priest had initially mocked the artifact, Lorraine gave him a super simple two-word command: don't joke. And whether you're a total believer in the paranormal or you just see these events as really tragic coincidences, don't joke basically became the ultimate golden rule for anyone who ever came near the thing. Okay, so that brings us right back to 2025. Dan Rivera puts together the Devil on the Run tour. The idea was to bring this notorious, dangerous artifact straight to eager paranormal fans nationwide. The doll traveled across multiple states, heavily secured in its glass box the entire time, and the public ate it up. Thousands of fans flocked to these venues, treating this supposedly cursed object like a massive rock star. Then, the unthinkable happens. Rivera tragically passes away right in the middle of the tour, and the internet, as you can imagine, went into absolute overdrive. People were asking, did the doll actually escape its case? Did it cause his death? I mean, it literally sounds like the ultimate horror movie setup. The very guy who takes the doll out of its resting place ends up dead. People completely bypassed logic and decided Annabelle was not only the culprit, but was actively on the run. But right here is where we absolutely have to pump the brakes and separate internet fiction from grounded reality. The viral rumor mill claimed the doll had somehow manifested inside Rivera's hotel room at the exact time of his death. But if we look at the actual source material and the formal investigation, the story is completely different. Let's look at what authorities actually found when they arrived on the scene. The objective facts from both the police and Esper investigators totally debunk the panic. They confirmed 100% that the doll was not missing. It was never even inside Rivera's hotel room. While he was sadly suffering a medical emergency upstairs, the artifact was sitting safely locked inside a traveler car out in the parking lot. Rivera had documented health issues leading up to the tour, and all the preliminary findings point to a natural, tragic medical event. No curses, just a really sad real-world loss. So, what happened to the doll? Well, with the tour suspended, it was simply packed up and returned right back to its original resting place in the Connecticut Museum. No wild cross-country chase, no demonic escape into the woods. The whole thing abruptly ended because of the tragic loss of its founder, and the artifact just went quietly back to exactly where it had sat for 50 years. You know, the source analysis hits the nail on the head with this quote. People choose folklore over facts because fear thrives on imagination. It's so true, right? Even when we are literally handed mundane, clear-cut police reports, a lot of people just prefer the thrill of a paranormal mystery. The truth is, a tragic medical event doesn't get clicks. A cursed doll on a rampage, that goes viral instantly. When a haunted object is involved, the facts are just so easily overshadowed by the folklore. Which really leaves us with this fascinating question. Why is society so drawn to cursed folklore, even when the facts are perfectly clear? Why do we desperately want these terrifying urban legends to be real? Dan Rivera's passing has unfortunately been turned into the newest chapter of a 50-year-old myth. So it kind of forces us to ask ourselves, are we actually afraid of these curses, or do we just secretly love the thrill of believing in them? Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer. And remember, always look for the facts behind the folklore.